Okay, we now welcome on Greg Peterson, host of the Hoopin with Hoops podcast. You can also find his best bet with the New York Post. Also, if you gamble on college basketball and you don't already follow him, first off, you're crazy, but follow his Twitter at gunit_81. We're recording this at, let's see what time it is, 11 p.m. Monday, December 28th on the East Coast. Greg, how'd you do tonight?
Today was a little bit more of a break-even night, so nothing great, nothing awful. You have those in the industry, but I'm doing great because I'm joining you right now. So thank you so much.
Great to have you, man. All right, so give me your backstory. When did this all start?
This all started back when I was in college. I was doing some work with my local college radio station, and you know what? I was with D3 UW Oshkosh. As you know, D3 universities, they typically don't get betting lines up on a game. Well, we were playing against South Dakota State that year. We took the game last minute. It was just one of those things where UW Oshkosh trying to raise some money. They're going to get their butts kicked. And I thought, you know what? I think it would be very interesting if this game had a spread on it because obviously South Dakota State, an FCS football school. I take a look and wouldn't you know it, 5 Dimes says UW Oshkosh as a 45-point underdog. I was sitting there thinking, yeah, UW Oshkosh, I don't want to take a shot on the money line, try to win a private island for myself. But you know what? $50 might be worth a shot for UW Oshkosh to cover 45. Wound up being minus 120 juice on that bet. But with that said, I wanted laying 60 to win 50. And just before I could place the bet, line had moved. So I'm just like, oh boy. Other people are thinking UW Oshkosh could cover too. Nope, went from 45 to 46 and a half. So I wound up getting that. UW Oshkosh didn't even allow 45 points in the game. They lost 38-3, was never a sweat. And then from there, I'm just like, oh, you know what? This stuff is pretty cool. And this was my senior year of college. So I was just sort of dabbling in that. I would wind up graduating from college, went to Nashville, Tennessee, was having a little bit of a rough go financially. And I was actually betting on some college basketball games to be able to raise a little bit of money for rent. I just remember it so vastly that I was just firing on UT Arlington just every game that season. That was when Kevin Hervey was just absolutely lighting it up. So that was fun. And then my travels take me to Portland, Oregon, where I meet a gentleman that he used to live out in Las Vegas. He would always just ask me blindly, and this was before I was really invested in the gambling market or anything like that, just what I would make the line on a game. And typically I was within like 2.5 points of the Vegas line. So thought I had a little bit of an itch. That buddy wound up moving back to Las Vegas, invited me for a job at a new startup company. That startup company was the Vegas Stats and Information Network. That was about 3.5 years ago. I wound up starting out behind the scenes. There was no intentions whatsoever of me really getting on air, but a lot of people realize, this guy knows a lot about college basketball, and he doesn't stop talking about it. And then one person at the network said, you know what? You should post your plays up on Twitter. That man, his name is Matt Human. So he is the reason why I've become what I am today. I give him full credit with it. And then from there was just a big following that wound up ensuing. I was getting more opportunities to be able to jump on with regards to guest spots, other radio shows, things like that. And here we are today, me firing on every single game, every single day, posting up a podcast every day, and it has been absolutely terrific.
So are you typically up or down through the years?
I've been having great success with college basketball. Now, don't ask me about my NFL picks this year. They were absolutely terrible. I know that many people out there can probably relate. I mean, football this year kicked my rear end, but I mean, for the most part, college basketball always has been my best sport. And the big reason why is because I actually used to be a college basketball bracketologist back in the day. I mean, I still remember being in the 7th grade watching Joe Lenardi and thinking, oh boy, I've got to watch this Bucknell Holy Cross game because Bucknell might have a shot at an at-large bid. Because when it comes to bracketology, you're graded the same if you wind up picking a 1 seed on that 1 line correctly as you are a 15 seed on the 15 seed line. So it's a big reason why I always say on my podcast, yeah, there's money to be made in being able to pick correctly Duke versus North Carolina, Wisconsin versus Maryland, things like this. But you can also make money on Norfolk State versus Coppin State.
That's awesome. So, This may sound dumb, but what do you look for most in picks?
What I really look for the most is just, am I able to get behind this team and are they a trustworthy side? So some of the stats I take a look at: free throw shooting. There's nothing worse than having your bet get torpedoed because Hassan French of St. Louis is going to the free throw line and he's shooting 40% for the year. Obviously, that's not necessarily too terrific. You take a look at coaching as well. Now, Michigan State having a little bit of a rough go of it right now, but by and large, Tom Izzo has been very trustworthy, and we know that that team winds up peaking in March. There are other coaches that, well, they're not necessarily so trustworthy. Leonard Hamilton, back in the day, was not necessarily terrific. Now, I will say he's been doing a much better job at Florida State. I do have to give him credit, but coaching is always one of those things. And then I also take a look at efficiency numbers because so many people are taking a look at, oh, Team X is giving up 72 points per game. Team Y is scoring 75 points per game. But what you want to be taking a look at is the amount of points that they score on a per possession basis, because you always hear that mantra that it's easier to slow down a fast team than it is to speed up a slow team. And that is something that I take into account with my handicapping. So I take a look at those efficiency numbers with regards to my picks rather than just look at the raw surface numbers. And I found some great success with that.
Do you follow any of the public betting and fade the public and all that?
I'm not a fade the public guy. Everything is just purely what I think of a game. I wind up setting a number on a side in total every single game. Now, I will deviate from it a little bit because, I mean, let's say that Wisconsin is laying 3 points against Purdue. If the line's at 3.5, it means that it's very close to what I make it, which means that I should probably do a little bit more research to see if there's a little bit more of an edge on one side or another. Maybe there's a little bit of a backstory. Maybe there's someone on Wisconsin that was maybe like turned down for Purdue or vice versa. Maybe there's a little bit of a motivating factor there. So that's something that happens. There are obviously some of these games in which it's out for my numbers. It's an easy fire away. But when you get into those close games, that's when I really start to do a little bit more of my deep dive research. I've actually found throughout the years that a lot of these picks, that the line is very close to what I make it. Sometimes those are my best picks because you're just looking for information that you really wouldn't necessarily find on a stat sheet. You wouldn't find in a spreadsheet. And sometimes that could just be the big difference maker in winning and losing a bet.
So give me what's the best year you've ever had? How many units have you been up? Or what was your record?
Last season, I made 301 units prior to the pandemic in college basketball. Whoa. That was by far the best year that I ever had. I was very, very salty when things wound up getting shut down. I wound up stooping to the point in which I wound up watching a few rom-coms on Netflix in April. I never want to return to that because it was a very good run, and hopefully we'll do a little bit better this year.
So dealing with the COVID situation this year, how much goes into no home crowd advantage?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, you still take into account travel, no question. Mm-hmm. When you have like a team like, for example, Rutgers traveling to Purdue or something like that, you're going to take that into account. But we know that these home courts are not necessarily created equal. Now, you do want to note that some of these places, like Texas Tech, we saw it in that Louisville versus Kentucky game last week. There are some fans in the stands at some of these games, but I mean, when you've got like 15% capacity, you're not going to be finding a whole bunch of college kids that are hopped up on like Bud Light Platinum and everything like that. Got to give a shout out for my favorite beer. You're not going to find them just going rowdy out there. It's a little bit more of a wine and cheese crowd. So that is something that certainly is taken into account. And typically you always used to hear that home court advantage would be worth 3 points generically. Obviously, you'd adjust for the camera crazies. And meanwhile, our good buddies, rest in peace, Chicago State and their college basketball
program. Pour one out for Chicago State.
Yep, you were nothing for them because there's literally nobody in the stands. They were practicing social distancing before it wound up being cool. But, I mean, it's one of those things where it really does play a big factor. And I think it's a big reason why you have seen a lot of these stark upsets. You're seeing a team like Kentucky entering into this week with one win, and you wind up seeing Wisconsin a few days ago wind up losing to Maryland in that big upset.
Yeah, because I'm a huge Duke fan, and there's such a difference when it comes to their home games. It's almost a disadvantage playing at home in a quiet Cameron because that when you just hit the rim, it sounds just so loud, and it's awful. Awful. But give me your best gambling story.
Oh, man, the best one ever. I was not here for it, but I know that Matt Humans passed this down through the Vegas Stats and Information Network because it was the first broadcast that they ever did. First broadcast was that Atlanta Falcons versus New England Patriots Super Bowl. So Brent Musburger is doing the broadcast. He winds up finishing up his set. At the time, the Atlanta Falcons are up 28-3. Brent Musburger going out the door, he says this famous line, "Turn out the lights, boys. The party's over." As we know, the party was just getting started. I just laughed so hard at that. It was a few months before I got there. It was a few months before I wound up getting that nickname Hoops from Brent Musburger. I just always think back to that. I know I've had a couple of my own, but that's just one that I crack up every time I hear it.
Okay, so what's the biggest win you've ever had? Are you a parlay guy at all, or?
Oh, I am not a parlay guy. I avoid them like the plague. And I am right now someone that I play every game consistently, but I mean, I used to be someone that I would bet a little bit more on some games than others.
Mm-hmm.
I wound up having a couple successes. My biggest one was that Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather fight. I just wound up dumping out my savings account on Floyd Mayweather. I figured it was the easiest money I would ever get. Obviously, it was. And then there was another game in which I bet $1,000 on for college basketball. And here's the reason why. Florida International was going up against a non-D1 school called Minnesota. I think it's Concordia St. Paul. They're a D2 school. They had won 10 games the season before. Florida International's like 6.5 points against a D2 school that had won 10 games the season before. Line went way out of whack because that school had knocked off UW Milwaukee as about a 20-plus point favorite. We no longer see it where these two D2 schools, when they take on D1 schools, wind up having a line. This was just some rare exception. I see Florida International laying 6.5 points, and I think, all right, what am I missing here? It is under the radar, this D2 school from the state of Minnesota, like stashing Karl Anthony Towns on their roster and waiting for him to get more eligibility or something like that. I wound up locking in on that Florida International, a knows what winner there. So those were some of my bigger hoists when it comes to sports gambling.
Oh my goodness. So I talked to you before a little bit. You said you don't dabble in futures at all. Why is that?
The big reason why is because I want to have all my bets just tethered to one specific event, one moment in time. And if I were to dabble into futures, I've actually found that you'd be able to make a little bit more money if you just wind up doing what is called a rolling parlay. I don't know if you know the name Richie Bachelari, but he is very famous out here in Las Vegas. One of the best in the business really ever when it comes to college basketball as well. I mean, the guy is a wealth of knowledge, but what you do is that you just wind up putting down the one unit that you dedicate to a future, and you put it on the money line of the team that you think wins the NCAA tournament. Let's say that they survive in advance. You take that one unit plus whatever you made in game one, and then you just roll it over. You put it on the money line time and time again. And by the end of it, typically you're able to get a little bit of a bigger cash than if you actually put down a future. And what you also get is protection, because we all remember a couple years ago, Auburn was able to make that Final Four, but Chuma Okeke, he winds up going down with a leg injury. Mm-hmm. If you've got a normal future, well, congratulations, you've got a Chuma Okeke list Auburn team in the Final Four. Meanwhile, if you go with that rolling parlay, you're able to say, you know what, I don't like this team anymore. I'm going to walk away from the table with my winnings. Or maybe you think that Auburn is still able to cover the game, but you don't think they're going to be able to win it outright. It gives you those options.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. So this is Monday night, December 28th. Give me your best pick for tomorrow.
All right, the best pick for tomorrow. I'm writing this one up for the New York Post. Clemson versus Florida State. I'm looking at the under in this spot. Last I checked before I came on this broadcast, it was right around 131.5. But you take a look at the defensive efficiency numbers of Clemson, top 10 in all of college basketball. You've got a guy in Scotty Barnes that's absolutely terrific for Florida State. A little bit of a unicorn. He's 6'9". He's a guy that's able to draw up the ball and everything like that, but he also shoots less than 50% the free throw line. That is called not good, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Clemson team that they themselves don't necessarily shoot it well from three-point range. I think that they've broken 67 points in 2 games so far this season. Meanwhile, Florida State, they've been doing a very solid job of being able to lock down defensively themselves. I think that this is just going to be a slow, grimy, if either team gets a 65, they'll be lucky sort of game.
But Greg, life's too short to bet the under, man.
It is, but at the same time, life is too short to pass by free money as well.
Do you like a side in that game?
I'm going to be probably looking at the points with Florida State. They wound up opening up at circa a little bit higher than what I'm seeing it right now. Right now, I'm seeing it right around 2.5-ish. I would still gravitate to Florida State. At this point, though, with it being so few points, I probably would wind up taking the money line, but I'd be looking at Florida State just because I do think that Clemson goes a little bit too much through Amir Sims. And with Clemson, you don't have a single guy on the team that's averaging more than 5 rebounds per game. So that is going to be an issue for them.
All right, Greg. Well, thanks for your time. This was awesome. Go check out his podcast, Hoopin with Hoops, with Greg Peterson. You can find it anywhere you find podcasts. Also, if you gamble on college basketball, like I said earlier, go follow him. It's the best money. It's free money. What are you doing? At @GUnit_81. Greg, thanks for your time, man.
It's a pleasure, Carter. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we now welcome on Grant Farley. He's going to be our college football guy going forward here on the KarterKast. Grant, how we doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, man.
No problem. No problem. All right, let's get into this. We're going to start off talking about the college football playoff. Who's your favorite to win? It's got to be Bama, right?
I mean, yeah, I think everyone's got Bama almost, sharpied in there. But, realistically, I do think Clemson has a shot. Spoiler alert to the semifinal. I'm sure we'll go through the semifinal games as well. But I really do think with Trevor Lawrence, heading out for the NFL this next season, I do think it's possible that he could try and, keep it close, because Bama's defense isn't, exactly what it used to be. Same thing you could say with Ohio State, right? Like their defense is, I think, the reason why that team doesn't feel like the same Ohio State team. But definitely, from Clemson's side, I could see them making a game out of it for sure, on the offensive side of it.
Yeah, so, do you think Ohio State or Notre Dame, either of them have a chance at winning their games, or what are your thoughts?
I don't think Notre Dame has a chance, to be honest. Like, I think you could have put, basically anyone in there in that 4 spot, and they would just been, murdered. Like the line's almost like 20 points right now, like plus 20. So, Vegas obviously doesn't think it's even going to be a close game. And from what I've seen, right, from what we saw in the last game against Clemson, it just doesn't seem like they're going to be, if they couldn't stop Trevor Lawrence, it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to stop this high-powered, Bama offense. So I do think Ohio State has a chance if they can figure out, what's going on that defensive side. Obviously losing Chase Young, losing some of those DBs, it's definitely not the same defense that they had last year. But with those two type of teams that have that, that talent matchup, it's definitely possible. I could see something crazy going on, but I do fully expect that Trevor Lawrence will get it done against Ohio State.
Are you in favor of Ohio State getting in, or should Texas A&M or Cincinnati gotten in?
So this is the good question, right? To be honest, I think it's more so maybe not even talking about Ohio State. I think it's Notre Dame really that we should be looking at. I don't even think they deserve to be that 4 spot after getting blown out the way they did. I really don't, because if you look at what they've done, right, their 2 best wins are what? Clemson without their best player, right, and then UNC. Those are those 2, and they did look really good against UNC.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we're talking about UNC. I think they're a solid team, but I don't think they're quite as good as everybody thinks they are, coming out of the ACC. So I do think I think it's more so who should have been over Notre Dame, to be honest. I do think Ohio State, their wins are not that impressive. So again, it's kind of like that moving target with the college football playoff, where it doesn't really make sense, that they necessarily get locked it up. But I do understand why they're there. They are a solid team, and they haven't proven anything otherwise that they don't deserve to be one of the top 4.
Well, with Ohio, do you think the Big Ten's overrated?
This year they look terrible, but I think you could look across the board from all the Power 5s, right? Because every Power 5 looks worse than they normally have. And I think it's just because they're all in conference, right? So I don't know if it's necessarily like a Ohio State issue. I definitely don't think the Big Ten's like where it used to be. I agree with that 100%. I think the ACC, you could say the same thing with that. I think the SEC this year, top to bottom, again, I think they're the best conference. Again, year in, year out, almost every single year. But even this year, they still look solid, right? So yeah, let's talk about A&M. Let's talk about A&M.
That's what I was going
since we're on the SEC, right? I do feel like they deserve a shot, because the only team they've lost to is Bama. they did get murdered by Bama, but who hasn't gotten murdered by Bama at this point, right? So I would rather have seen a rematch of Bama versus A&M over Bama just wiping the floor. That's me personally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, everyone might be like, yeah, like I don't understand how you'd want to see that same game again. But, round 2 this time, it could be a little bit different. And I do think they match up better than what, to me, it's going to look better. I think it would look better. And I think they deserved it, right? They played SEC schedule. They beat Florida. Florida's a solid team. Had a weird mishap against LSU, but they looked really good. They looked really good this year. They've taken care of business apart from Bama, which I don't think you can hold that much against them for.
Okay, so you mentioned Texas A&M, all those other teams that didn't get in. But what about Cincinnati? Do you think they had any shot? Well, they obviously clearly had no shot, but do you think they should have had a shot?
Yeah, I think in the case of Cincinnati, I think they definitely should have had a shot, right? So I would rather see Cincinnati get blown out by Bama than I would rather see Notre Dame get blown out by Bama. To me, if you can't take care of business against a fully healthy Clemson team, then how do you expect to win the whole thing? To me, it doesn't make sense why they would even be put in the top 4 teams. Like I get like their resume solid, but really like to me, beating a non-healthy Clemson team right without their best player is not that impressive. Even at home, and on top of that, your next best one is UNC. So like, you could really say that Cincinnati could be in there and just get absolutely murdered. It'd be the same thing, right? So I would love to have seen them get a shot for sure. It's just the format right now; it's a little difficult for those guys to shuffle in.
If Cincinnati schedules BYU and beats them, are they in, or there's just no chance, no matter what, because they're not Power 5 without the money?
Yeah, I mean, you know me, bro. I'm the biggest BYU homer there is, right? But no, I don't think that would have moved the needle that much, to be honest. Like,
we even saw with Coastal, obviously too.
Yeah, in exactly like even let's just say BYU. I know we're not on this topic, but let's just say BYU had beaten Coastal, right? On a short notice, they'd gone down there, they would have beaten them. I don't even think that would have necessarily guaranteed a New Year's Six at this point. Looking at the rankings, right? Looking to what they have done to shuffle in, because at the end, the conference championships was a way bigger deal for these guys than what we expected from the college football playoff. So it looks like they shuffled in those guys over almost any scenario that you would have seen.
So while we're on the topic of those other group of 5 teams, are we more likely to see a group of 5 playoff, or are we more likely to see an expanded college football playoff?
Yeah, this is exactly like where my hot takes come in, right? Where I think like it'd be cool to see. So I definitely am in favor, and I think almost everybody is at this point after seeing this year specifically. Because if this year you can't get, undefeated Cincinnati like looking like the way they did, or some of the other group of top teams that look really good, get them in there or even close to it, right? Because like at this point it wasn't even like they were 5, like they weren't even close, right? After that whole season, that they were like, I think, what did they finish at 8 before the New Year's Six Bowl, somewhere in there. So like they weren't even close if you really look at it. Like they had the path there was impossible for them. So I would have, loved to have seen it. So I think the real like moving forward, I think everybody's on board for an expanded playoff. And so my take is this: like people say, right, like how if Cincinnati had gone in, they would have been murdered. Probably, right? Like most likely they also would be, favored, plus 20 in Vegas, if not more, plus 25, somewhere in that range. That's not the argument here. What I'm saying is if we can open up the playoff system and add more teams, I think we'll see a more even balance across college football. So I don't think the argument is like, well, these teams can't compete. I agree, right? I don't think Cincinnati can compete in the SEC schedule week in, week out. I'm not saying this at all. But what I am saying is I do think it would be really cool to open it up and then be able to see what kind of recruiting effects, take place after that. Because if you open it up, you'll like, my thing is like Gonzaga, right? For example, in basketball, like I know it's not the same. It's not, apples to apples, but if you look at that, there's no way in the current system, if the NCAA, men's basketball had the same format that college football does, there's no way we'd have a Gonzaga today. There's no way, right? There's no way a team in Spokane, Washington would be able to, be better than Duke or, better than Kansas, consistently these past couple of years. There's no way, right? And it's just because everybody has a shot. And so I love that aspect of it. So recruits can go there knowing that, look, I don't have to go to these 4 schools or these 6 schools that only have a chance, right? I think that's where we're at now, where it's like, if you don't go to Bama, Clemson, LSU, one of these guys, Ohio State, you're not getting in. And it's just as simple as that. So I think if we can open it up, I think then the argument wouldn't be necessarily like, yeah, these teams can't, you're right, they probably can't hang. but what would happen with the recruits, right? If you're hometown heroes, you see a lot more kids staying home to the schools they love instead of going, just to the schools they think would be able to make the playoff.
I see that, but a lot of people, the argument against this is it dilutes the regular season. And they're saying teams like Cincinnati shouldn't even have the chance at making the playoff. Or if we expand it, we're going to have a 3-loss Florida team in there. Does a 3-loss Florida team even deserve the chance at winning a national championship is the argument. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you take care of it through the conference championships, right? I mean, everyone's pretty big on those. So what that would look like is you just put more emphasis, because as of right now, the way college football is heading, if you have 1 or 2 losses, right, outside of those big schools, like in the big conferences, you're done. And you're seeing more and more players opt out of these bowl games. Obviously, this year it's a little more dramatic than normal with COVID, but you're seeing more and more people opt out of these bowl games because they're meaningless, right? They mean nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Even the New Year Six is almost diluted to the point where it's like great consolation, but all the Florida players, right, are opting out.
Carolina, first time making an Orange Bowl, and their 4 best players are already gone, other than Sam Howell.
Exactly. So, I mean, we're seeing the complete dilution of college football already as it is. So what would we rather do? Try and save it by, creating a more, competitive. I mean, if you look at, men's basketball has the greatest format for, playoff at any sport, right? And so if you can even take half of what, March Madness has and just there's no way that I think it would be worse. It can't be worse than what we're saying now, is what I mean. It could be, but I can't see it being worse. I think you just put a bigger emphasis on the conference championship games, and then you have a couple at-large bids for those guys that at least have a shot, right? Even if they're a 16 seed or whatever it is, however big you make it. If they get murdered by Bama, they got murdered by Bama, but at least they had a shot, right?
So you're saying 16? Where would you want to expand it to?
Yeah, I think if you're going to do it, you got to do it to 16. And the reason why, I think you got to go big in this because, again, if you're only going to drag it out, let's just say 4 to 6, right? And then you do like the major 5, Power 5 conferences and the 1 at large or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that does enough to really move the needle. I think if you really want to shake it up, like what you're seeing now, is just all the major bowls. And then, of course, like you have different tie-in bowls. Those have got to be your 16 playoff, or at the very least 8. Like it's got to be at least 8, in my opinion, to even like shake something up.
Don't you think I'm more in favor of 6 because I think 1 and 2 are usually kind of head and heels above everyone else. Why shouldn't they get an advantage in a bye?
Yeah, I mean, their advantage would be in this scenario, like let's just say it's a 16 seed, would be playing like a Tulsa, right? Like they should murder that team, right? If everyone's saying they're like, they're so much better head and shoulders. But what I'm saying is if you have this format, I think it would stop from what you're saying right now, head and heels above better teams, right? Because right now, of course, right, you play Bama against any team in the country, basically, they're going to murder them, right? Even Florida, right? Florida was a good game, but even like Texas A&M, right, who's arguably one of the top 4 teams in the country, just absolutely murdered them, right? So to me, it's like it's not an argument of like if these teams could hang, it's what would happen if we did expand it, right? Like what kind of options would that mean for these teams that are just looking for a chance? And I really do feel like if you could expand it big enough, I feel like people would take notice and they wouldn't feel like they're forced to go to these specific teams to be able to play for a championship, is all I'm saying. I don't know if it's true, but I think it'd be a better shot than what we have now.
Also, backtracking on that, in the 1/16 games, the first round games could be at their home stadiums too, with the higher seed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think there's all the advantages in the world, right? Like, again, if Bama's playing like a Tulsa or someone like that, like, and they don't win that game, like, come on, right? Like, they're gonna. It's just like how it is now, right? How many 16 seeds really beat a 1 seed? Not very often at all, but it can happen. That's the cool thing, is like you'd have that option. So yeah, I mean, obviously they'd have a massive advantage for what they did in the regular season, and they'd still be getting credit for 1 being in the SEC, 2 being an amazing team, all that good stuff. They would just have to play a couple more games than they normally would, right? And so I think that's the biggest issue, is figuring out how many games can you add before you really start to, these players, right? Physically, mentally, everything, right? Because you can only play so much football before these kids start really getting hurt, because everybody's playing banged up by the postseason. So that's my only concern with expanding it, is that you just got to be careful with what you're doing to the players, right? I don't think it's necessarily fair that they play all these extra games.
Yeah, and I don't see them taking away regular season games to bring it down to a normal 10-game season just to expand this playoff.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think you're right. I don't know if it'll ever get to 16. I would love to see 16. That's just me personally. I think a more realistic goal is just at least double it. Let's get to 8. I think 8 would be a solid, even having a bye or something like that. Whatever it is, right? I'd just like to see it expanded because at the current format, I mean, you're going to see the same teams every single year in, year out. It's just what it is.
Yeah. So let's go back to the college football playoff. So we were talking about the spreads earlier. Bama is a 19.5-point favorite against Notre Dame. The over-under is 65.5. What do you like in that game?
As crazy as it sounds, I almost like the spread with Bama, like taking, laying the points or whatever. Because I don't know if you can trust. Like, I feel like Notre Dame for sure is going to score. They're going to score. Bama's defense isn't necessarily, as potent as it used to be. But I don't know if you're going to be able to get, 30 points out of them, 20 plus points out of them. I don't know if you're going to see that. So I don't think I'd play this game personally, right? I don't think I'd play this game in any way, shape, or form. But if I had to play something, I'd play the spread on Bama. I'd literally take like the minus 19.5, what it's at right now, which is crazy to say in a semifinal game. But I just don't see. I don't know if I could play against Bama even with the points. I don't know if I could do that.
All right, the next game, Clemson minus 7.5. This has gone from 7.5 to 8.5. Wherever you see the number versus Ohio State, over under is 66.5.
Yeah, I mean, I like the over a lot on this game. More so than I think the spread, just because some weird stuff can happen. But I do think with the defenses like that they are, I think because you look at how many points Notre Dame was able to score on Clemson, both games, and how many points people even in the end, like all these teams have been able to score on Ohio State. I feel like the over is pretty enticing. So I would that's probably the play I would do out of these two games. I'd probably play the over. I don't know. What are you thinking on that one?
I would go Clemson. Are you impressed at all with Justin Fields? Because I'm certainly not.
Yeah, see, I know we'll talk about this, but man, it seems like that defense was bigger than we thought it was. And so, I think it alleviated a lot of the pressure that Justin Fields is feeling this year. So I think his biggest criticism people keep saying is his mental clock in the pocket, right? He's having issues with holding on the ball way too long. And there's actually advanced like stats on how many seconds he's getting in the pocket, and under pressure he's even getting more, which is not a good statistic if you want to see if you're an NFL scout how many seconds he's getting in the pocket. It's pretty concerning. So that I would say that's probably his biggest knock. I do think he's an incredible quarterback. I think he's super mobile, right, which is like all everyone wants to see these days. And I do think he has a great arm strength. Incredible arm strength. So I don't know if he's necessarily like as bad as people are saying, or not as good as people are saying right now. I think it's a little over dramatic, the talk, but it has not looked good. Like if you look at these games, like he can't pull away from some of these teams that he should just be absolutely down. Northwestern game looked absolutely rattled the entire time against this, solid Northwestern team. I don't know what you really want to call that.
Everyone says that defense is incredible. I think they're comparable to an SEC defense that we see Bama put 63 on every week.
Exactly, and like what Kyle Trask is doing in comparison is like his numbers are insane. Like I'm super impressed with what Kyle Trask has done as a quarterback at Florida in an all SEC schedule too. He has more touchdown passes and less interceptions than Joe Burrow did, which is insane in an all SEC schedule. So hats off to Kyle Trask. Super impressed with him. I think he's an incredible talent for sure, because he's thrown to the same type of people that that Justin Fields is. So you can't really say, and probably playing better DBs, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. That Indiana game and that Northwestern game were super alarming for me. That's why I think Clemson. I think this is going to be a pretty boring college football playoff semifinal. I think they're going to be both 20-point blowouts at least.
Yeah.
I don't think Ohio State.
So you're all over Clemson then.
Yeah, I don't think Ohio State honestly has a shot. I've watched every game this year. This defense is awful, and everyone was raving about Notre Dame's defense before the ACC championship game. Clemson's backup quarterback put 45, 41 on them.
Exactly.
Plus, whatever you want to say. And Trevor Lawrence easily put up 34. I mean, they're just going to – Ohio State's not going to be able to stop Trevor Lawrence.
That's what I think. I think it's just going to be, and I think with both these games, right? I think even, Bama, like I said, their defense is not amazing this year. It's way better than, most of these teams, but it's not like the normal Bama defenses. Their offense is just explode. Like, you cannot keep up. Notre Dame will not keep up with. It's just impossible. There's no way. I don't see a scenario where they're able to keep up with the amount of points that Bama is going to be able to score. And I think you're right. I could totally see it being a super boring. I'm hoping not, right? That's why I kind of like the over in this one, because I'm hoping it's a close game. I'm hoping that, Ohio State shows something, and maybe, right, because Dabo's talked, about how them not even ranked in the top 10, which again, however way you look at it, it could be right that they're not deserving, because they played 6 games. Their best win is Northwestern. Their second best one is what? Indiana?
Yes.
So arguably A&M for sure has a better win than Ohio State. And their only losses to the, for sure, clear-cut best team in the country. So maybe with that, locker room talk, we like to say, is enough to keep them motivated, right? And maybe we see something completely different from Justin Fields, because I don't think Clemson's defense is necessarily locked down like the most incredible defense in the world, but it will give them fits, especially if Northwestern was able to give them fits. Like, for a fact, they're going to be able to do some stuff to them.
Yeah, we saw they were hurt. They had their guys out during the Notre Dame game where Notre Dame put up 40-plus against them. They come back. They play Notre Dame. Notre Dame puts up 10.
Yep, exactly. And I think that's what we're looking at. I don't think, like, everyone was so impressed with that win, and I really was not. From the start, I was like, I don't think that win is anywhere near what people think it is. How can you say that, that's beating the team without their best player is not impressive to me? It's just not. It's not the same team. It's not the same team. Beating a freshman, backup quarterback, it's not the same thing. So I think you're right. I think Bama game's for sure a blowout. That's why I said I would lean taking the points, which is crazy, right? Or not taking the points, but taking the, minus 20. And then I would definitely, if I was going to play a team, I'd play Clemson for sure over Ohio State. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to do everything possible to look really, really good, as he leaves college football for good. So I definitely would take, them, or I'd take the over. Those are probably the two right plays, in my opinion.
Okay, so assuming Clemson and Alabama win, how's that game looking like?
See, just because, there's so much history teams, obviously, the college football playoff era. I do think it's going to be a game. I don't know why. Most people, I think it's just going to be the same thing, just Bama blow. I don't think it's going to be that, especially if Florida was able to give them a game, kind of, keep it close towards the end. I do think it's going to get a little weird. I think some stuff's going to happen. I think it's going to be a close game, and I could totally see this game coming down to like a final drive or something crazy like that. Just because, you and me know there's going to be some weird stuff on a national championship game. They need the ratings, so some weird stuff's going to be going on with the laundry, with the penalties and stuff like that. So I could totally see this game coming down to a super close game, and I could see Clemson. I could see Clemson maybe pulling off the upset. I could see it. I can for sure see it.
Oof. I don't see it as much.
You heard it. You heard it here first. If they come down to the last drive and Trevor Lawrence has to win it for him, you're like, oh man, Grant told me that. I'm just saying, I could see it.
Yeah, if I have someone on the final drive, I think I would rather have Trevor Lawrence than any other quarterback in the country.
For sure.
Even going into that game, but Devontae Smith is outrageous with Najee Harris. But all right, so you're going with Clemson to win it all?
No, I'm going with Bama to win it all, but I'm saying don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if Clemson makes it a fun game in the championship.
Okay.
But I'm definitely thinking Bama. There's no, I don't know how you could not take Bama in this situation. Okay. I would like to see the spread of that game, though. It depends on how Clemson looks against Ohio State. And then whatever that spread is, like I said, I might take the points with Clemson.
All right, yeah. So I just mentioned his name. Devontae Smith is the Heisman favorite at minus 180. Mac Jones is next at plus 155. Trevor Lawrence at plus 1,600. Kyle Trask 27-1. Najee Harris 50-1. Does anybody take over Devontae Smith?
See, first of all, can we pause and talk about how many people are in the top 5 for Bama? This is insane. This is literally crazy. Exactly.
That's why I'm surprised you even mentioned Clemson having a chance to beat them.
Like I said, I could see something crazy happen, especially between those two teams. But I mean, this is insane, the amount of talent that's coming out of Bama year in, year out. And again, it goes back to what I mentioned. I think there's no recruit that doesn't get that offer and thinks like, I'm going to play for national championship, if not win one within, 2 years, which is a pretty cool thing to be able to say, guarantee almost. So when it comes down to it, I think Devontae Smith for sure is going to take it. I think he's the most valuable player. So I think he deserves it, right? I think he deserves that over, Mac Jones, or any of these guys, because he is the Heisman type player for that team, right? So yeah. I do think he earns it. I don't think anyone's going to overtake him. But shout out Najee Harris too. He's a baller as well.
Yeah.
He definitely deserves recognition.
Do you think Trevor Lawrence gets it if it wasn't for COVID?
Yeah, I do. I think they would have beaten Notre Dame, no question, the first time around at Notre Dame, which would have been super impressive win. So yeah, I think he just missed his window, which is unfortunate because I think he would have won it.
All right, now transitioning NFL mock draft. So we're both BYU fans.
Yeah, buddy.
Mock draft from Pro Football Focus as of 5 days ago has our Zach Wilson ranked above Justin Fields. Do you agree with that? Even with your bias, do you agree with that?
So I don't want to agree with it just because I don't want him going to the Jets. So I'm gonna make an argument against it. Okay, that way he doesn't go to the Jets. As crazy as this sounds. Who's number 4 now? Is it the Atlanta Falcons? I think the Falcons overtook the Panthers for 4.
Panthers, with their awful win against the Washington football team, I believe are 9th.
Shoot. So this is what's going to happen, right? So with what happened this past Sunday, what I'm hoping happened is I'm hoping they saw enough out of Sam Darnold to be like, okay, look, we're going to build around this guy, either through, Penny Sewell, the guy from Oregon. I hope that's who they take. I really do hope that's who they take. Hope they take him number 2 over, just because if our boy Zach Wilson goes to the Jets, I don't know if he's ever going to come out the same. I don't know if he's ever going to be able to have the opportunity to really be a quarterback. And that's horrible, right? To say you don't want your guy to go number 2 overall. But I've seen a couple mock drafts and they're showing Zach Wilson at number 2 now, which is crazy to me. Like, could you imagine thinking that before the season started?
Not in the slightest.
Not even like watching him play. I mean, you and I have seen every game, right? From his first start from Hawaii, super impressive, right? Super mobile, super accurate. He made throws. He would like the weirdest thing for us to transition from was like just terrible QB play for so many years that when like it was like 3rd and 2 and the dump down pass was there and he didn't take it, he took like a 30-yard, bomb pass, and we're like, what are you doing? But then completed it. We're like, oh, that's right. Like this guy can actually throw.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I don't know. I think I'm intrigued to see what happens at number 2. Again, multiple mock drafts have him going at number 2. I think the argument really is Zach Wilson a more NFL ready quarterback than Justin Fields, right? And I think that's the argument that people need to have. I mean, from your view, what are you seeing, right? Do you really feel like Zach Wilson's better than Justin Fields at this point?
I 100% do.
Really?
Watching Justin, I think Justin Fields he's fallen off a little bit this year. I think Zach Wilson is the more accurate quarterback, and he is super calm in the pocket. I mean, he's got a great offensive line. He's got a great offensive line, first off. And they're not going against as hard of defenses as an SEC or Big Ten. But I don't think his receivers are anywhere near as good as a Devontae Smith or Kadarius Toney.
Exactly. So that's my argument, right? When people are always like, yeah, he's throwing the, straight garbage coverage. Probably, right? He is. There's no argument around that. It's pretty terrible competition. But when you look at the throws, side by side, those throws are money, regardless of who's covering them, right? It doesn't matter. It's in this, like his accuracy. I will say this: I don't think there's a quarterback, even Trevor Lawrence. I think he's a better, like accuracy wise, for sure, than Trevor Lawrence, which is saying something. I know that's like blasphemy to even mention something that's better than Trevor Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence is a clear cut number 1. No one's saying he's not. But what I'm saying is, I do think his accuracy is absolutely incredible. So super impressive. I think you're right. I think Zach is more NFL ready just from what he's done on his own time, right? His off the field stuff that he's been working on. I think he just looks more complete as a quarterback as of now. But the drop off from Trevor Lawrence is pretty big. So it's just a question if you really want to take a quarterback number 2 or you want to build around the guy you have. So, that's the question. or do you take Justin Fields, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many options there.
Do you think anybody trades up for him?
Um,
I mean, we got to see
I
some
know,
wild stuff, right?
Yeah, I think if the Jets were smart, I think what they do is they trade back for picks, like you said. I think they trade the pick, and I think they'd take, basically a really solid lineman or a solid receiver, give someone, right, to even if it's not Sam Darnold, a future quarterback, right? Somebody, right? You got to build around them because that team is terrible, right? From the front office to the coach, everything in general. So that's why I personally think I would like to see that, but I don't know. The thing is, with the number 2 pick, it feels like it's going to go quarterback. Like, I don't know if they're going to go lineman. I don't know why, but that's just kind of the feeling I'm getting from like all this, not only mock drafts, but kind of the vibe of the NFL right now. It's like, if you don't have a solid, quarterback, it's like, why are you even playing the game?
Yeah. So we see, I've never seen this many. I mean, they're saying Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, and Justin Fields will go 3 out of 4. 3 out of the first 4 picks will be quarterback. Possibly, depending on how it all works out in Week 17, we could see 3 quarterbacks take it in a row. Insane. Not to mention, there should be 3 more quarterbacks taken in the first round with Mac Jones, Trey Lance, who I haven't really seen much, and Kyle Trask.
Yep.
I mean, as a Falcons fan, do you think you have Zach Wilson?
So I mean, as a Falcons fan, I would love to have Zach, just because I think he'd be a perfect type of replacement for Matty Ice, right? For Matt Ryan. And I think he'd be mobile, right? So I think that's just all that Matt Ryan is. And he's won an MVP. He's done what he needed to do. Took us to a Super Bowl, lost like one of the biggest leads in NFL history. It's whatever, water to the bridge. We won't go there. But, I think with what we're seeing, he looks like him, right? I feel like he can make those type of throws. He's super accurate. I would love to see him go to an organization like that. Plus, to see him throw to Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, like, who wouldn't want to see that, right? Or to the Panthers. I would way rather see him go to the Panthers than to be stuck with the Jets. Like, this is just me, being a homer for Zach. But, man, it would be rough to really see him go number 2 to the Jets. No one wants to see that, right? Except for maybe the Jets. Everyone else is like, yeah, please don't. So
real quick,
I hope they take a lineman.
Are they moving on from Matt Ryan?
So I think there's too much money in Matt Ryan right now. So, I've had a conversation with like a bunch of people that diehard Falcons fans. I think there's a lot of money. I think they're transitioning, but I don't know if they'll necessarily want to spend a super early first round pick on a quarterback yet. I don't know. Again, 100% that could change if the right person's there that they feel is the perfect fit for their system. If something weird shakes up and Penny So goes number 2 at the Jets, and then they have both them, Justin Fields and Zach Wilson, they really like one of the two, 100% I can see him pulling the trigger and just having that guy in weight, but he's not going to be the day one starter, in my opinion. There's no way that they're going to put a rookie quarterback over Matt Ryan until he's really, really showing signs that he can't win games, because he's still winning games, right? Completely looked good against the Chiefs last Sunday, looked, fine. And I feel like they're pretty close to being, again, competitive again. So I don't know if they're necessarily looking to spend that high of a draft pick for a quarterback yet. So we'll see. But again, if something weird happens with the Jets and they have the choice between 2 quarterbacks they really like, I could 100% see him pulling the trigger on one of the 2. Yeah.
All right. Well, Grant, thanks for coming on, man. If you're going to be on a lot more in the future, guys, if you haven't heard them already. So appreciate it. Anything to add? Anything to plug?
No plugs. I mean, just, go Cougs, first of all, right? huge BYU homer.
Did you win in the 2020 roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl?
Oh, dude, shout out the Roof Claim Bowl. You know what I mean? I really wanted to go to that bowl game. I was super excited. So yeah, very excited we won that bowl game. But no, man, I think this year's been super interesting because it's taught us a lot of things about college football that we didn't necessarily know for sure. But I think now it's like the writing on the wall is like, look, if you're in a G5, there is no path that you're going to play with the big boys in the championship game. Like, that is 100%. Because Gary Butter was asked straight up, they're like, look, man, do you think it's possible? And his response was like, yeah, if they had a schedule like BYU's, right, pre-COVID, which is 6 to 7 Power 5 scheduled. No team that's affiliated with the G5 conference can have 6P5. Like, that's impossible. So they're like
Mm-hmm.
basically saying like, oh yeah, if you can do this, that's not possible for you. It's like, okay, so like, what are we doing here? So I mean, I think more things are solidified for what's realistic. I don't think though the path is to like have a separate G5 championship though. I just think it would like completely kill those universities. Like, I don't think there's enough. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but I don't think there's enough there for like them to have their own separate championship. But let's see if Zach goes. Well, I really hope he doesn't go number 2. I hope he goes like number 4 to the Carolina or to the Falcons. But we'll see, right? Hopefully he goes at 4 overall, not 2. So, yeah.
All right, appreciate it, my man. Talk to you soon. Good luck with everything. I hope the family's well. Happy holidays.
Hey, happy holidays, man. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.